الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء وخاتم المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة الدائمة الباقية على أعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد, brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum. We have been looking at Surah at-Talaq, Surah number 65 of the Quran, and we covered the first 7 ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about just some aspects of the ruling about talaq. And then he concludes in ayat number 8, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we looked at it last night, that he ends by talking about an example from a general statement of examples from the nations in the past who defined the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whenever there was defiance in a very broad scale, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish the ummats and the nations who came before. And so that is a normal way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala many times give examples from the previous nations. And this was the issue that he says, those who did not follow the command of the Lord and His messengers, فَحَاسَبْنَاهَا حِسَابًا شَدِيدًا, we took their account very severely. وَعَذَّبْنَاهُ عَذَابًا نُكْرًا, and we made them go through a dire punishment. And then we continue tonight with ayat number 9 and the first statement from ayat number 10, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَذَاقَتْ وَبَالَ أَمْرِهَا, and so it tasted the evil consequences of its conduct. وَكَانَ عَاقِبَةُ أَمْرِهَا خُسْرًا, and the outcome of its conduct was ruins and nothing else. خُسْرًا and loss. And then وَعَدَّ اللَّهُ لَهُ عَذَابًا شَدِيدًا, and Allah has prepared for them a severe punishment. So just to connect this ayat number 9 and 10 with the previous discussion, number one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he started with, first came the family laws, and the emphasis on taqwa. Remember, وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ at least 3 times, and وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهِ earlier. And so the emphasis of taqwa was there when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was talking about the family laws. Here the example was of divorce. And then yesterday we saw how he ended with the example of those who defied the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the messengers, and they were punished. And we looked at the category of and the types of punishments that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had imposed on nations before. And now he is basically concluding. Number one, they tasted the consequences of their defiance in this world. The azab would happen in this dunya basically was the consequences of their wrongdoing. And then he ends with the words وَعَدَّ اللَّهُ لَهُمْ عَذَابًا شَدِيدًا, and He has prepared for them a severe punishment in the hereafter. And so there was azab in this dunya, and there is azab in the akhirah. And this is where we have to realize that this issue of defying the commandments of Allah and the Rasul is sent down in the Quran, and the seerah of the Prophet is preserved by the Ahlul Bayt. This is a very serious issue. We hear these days quite a lot that we live in different times, different place, different era, and therefore not only the issue of Sunnah, but even going to the Quran, they would say some of the laws of the Quran are no more applicable during our time, especially when it comes to family laws. And this is where I would say that look at Surah at-Talaq, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the warning of taqwa again and again and again. The next ayat, and we'll only deal with this first statement from ayat number 10 of Surah at-Talaq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revisits this issue of taqwa and begins by saying, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهِ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. So fear displeasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and all you who possess intelligence, who believe. The ayat will continue, but I would just like to concentrate tonight on this issue of أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. It's interesting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is appealing to the intelligence of human beings, especially addressing the mu'mineen. And He says, you have seen the history, you read the nations who came before, again and again, whenever they defied the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they faced ruin and decay. This was the khusran for them. And so by appealing to the intelligence of the believers, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, learn the lesson and reflect on it. The problem is sometimes we take the stories of the Quran as just stories. Whereas we have to realize that, even in Surah Yusuf, if there is any kind of historical or story narration in the Quran in a sequence, chronological order of the story from beginning to the end, is Surah Yusuf only. Otherwise, the story of Musa would be all over the Quran, and not necessarily going from his birth and childhood to youth and then his risalat and the mission later on. No, it's all mixed up. Only one place you see the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about it from the beginning to the end in a way. And there also He says that these are the qisas, which are actually ibra for you. Ibra means actually, the bridge. The bridge between the present and the past. You learn the stories of the past to reflect and find the path in the present. You cannot, disconnect yourself from what happened in the past, because we will chart our future based on what happened in the past. And so this story is this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, reflect about it. Maintain the taqwa, and this is the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses us. If you look at this concept of, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ, what does أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ mean? Albab comes from lub. Albab is the plural of that. And something which is inside something else, or the kernel and not the husk, that is known as the lub. And it is used to describe something which is pure, something which is the choice of a person. When you look for many things, you will throw away the husk, you will go for what is inside it, or the best part of something. If you look at the walnut, first you have to break the shell, and then even then you will see there is another layer there, and that's where you come to the actual, if I may use the beef or the meat in it. And that is lub. Interestingly, walnut, it's very similar to the brain as far as the the shape is concerned. And so when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses this term lub and the word uli al-albab, and that means those who possess. And so this actually refers to the aql that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to the human beings. Now it's not a physical entity that you can actually as a surgeon cut it open and find the lub. No, this is a non-physical entity as far as Islamic sources are concerned. But using this term, fattaqullah, fear displeasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all those who possess intelligence. So intelligence is the best part of human wujud and existence. And the term ulul albab, ulul mal, ulul amr, for example. This is where the word ulul comes in. And so here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the beauty of this is that He connects that immediately. There is no wow. فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهِ يَا أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. He's connecting the words, those who possess intelligence, with الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. I had to put a comma in English, otherwise it wouldn't, look right there. But there is no comma here, there is no wow, nothing. أولي الألباب الذين آمنوا. And the way it is put is actually to emphasize that those who have Iman cannot be devoid of aql. This is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, emphasizing the issue of aql for human beings. And this is a very, a beautiful way of saying that, Allah is saying, I respect you. You believe in me. I respect you because of your intelligence. Fattaqullah. Therefore, fear displeasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at the examples of what happens to others. Of course, because of this rahmat of the Prophet, known as Rahmatun lil Alameen, disasters of the global scale, the way it happened in the past, is no more there. Because this is the era of Rahmatun lil Alameen. But it doesn't mean that, those kind of, in a different form or category, the azab do not come. All these new diseases which didn't existed before. These are all basically a result of what human beings themselves have been doing. It is the consequences of their own ma yaksabun, what they earn through their own, evil doings. Let me, move from here to the emphasis that we have, especially in the Shi'i school of thought, when we talk about the issue of aql. And I would like to emphasize this because when it comes to the matters of aqidah, belief system in Islam, from the Shi'i point of view, in aqidah, taqleed, blind following, is not acceptable. If you look at the manual of Islamic laws by our Grand Maraji, Ayatul Sistani and all others, you will see the very first ruling in the book says that when it comes to Usuluddin, when it comes to the matters of Aqidah, taqleed is haram. You must base your Aqidah on conviction, based on your own understanding. Of course, you need the guidance from your elders, from the teachers, from the scholars in the community, and also from the Quran, but not in the sense that you say, why do you believe in God? If you say, I believe in God because Quran says so, an outsider will ask you the second question, why do you believe in the Quran? And you'll say, well, I believe in the Quran because God says so. It becomes door, vicious circle, where you have to say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me aql. I look at the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and upon reflection I come to realize that this world could not exist without, a powerful God. And so it has to be, you don't have to become, Mullah Sadra or a great scientist or something like that. No, we are not talking about it. A very simple understanding. The example we have from the days of the Prophet, one day he was passing by an alley and he saw an old lady spinning the wheel there for making, spinning the wool. And he just stopped. He stopped and asked her, what is the basis of your belief in God? And she lifted her hand from the handle of the spinning wheel. And she said that if this cannot move without my hand, how can this whole system run without, a supreme being? So for her, and probably she was an illiterate woman in Medina, because literacy was a very rare commodity those days. But the point is that, her aqidah in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was not based on saying, "Oh Rasulullah, because you said so." Because then the question would be, why you believe in him then? Until you go to the point where you say, "Well, I am convinced." And this is where we see the importance of, aql as the foundation of our basic teachings of our aqidah. We also see this especially in the way it comes out more obviously if you see the thematic system of ahadith, especially in the Shi'i tradition. And I'll give you the comparison here just to, highlight this point that when it comes to the Shia aqidah, this rational method in the aqidah is very important. When it comes to fiqh and ahkam, it's a different thing. There the basis is not ta'aqqul, it is ta'abbud. Once you have believed in Allah, Rasul and the Quran, whatever is said by them, you have to accept it whether you understand or don't understand. And this is where you will see, for example, the first collection of hadith in the Shi'i history, in the Shia tradition, is a book known as Al-Usul al-Kafi, or Al-Usul min al-Kafi. Al-Kafi is the famous name. Now, like other muhaddithin, even among Sunnis, when they compile the ahadith, they basically put them according to subject and themes. So they have, Kitab al-Salat, Kitab al-Sawm, Kitab al-Hajj, based on the themes. If you look at Al-Kafi, you will see that the very first book in there is Kitab al-Aql wal-Jahl, which contains all the ahadith that we have in the Shi'i sources from Rasulullah and the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, where the issues of aql and jahl have been described. The second chapter, again, is Kitab Fadl al-Ilm, the book of excellence of knowledge. And then we come to the third chapter, which is Kitab al-Tawheed, where you have the ahadith about Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is where you see that, even Shaykh Kulaini, the compiler of Usul Kafi, basically the method or the preference that he has for the thematic, collection of ahadith is influenced by the Shi'i, Aqli tradition. This is where the importance of aql is highlighted, ilm is there, and then you come to the issue of Kitab al-Tawheed, where you talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And after that you go to Kitab al-Hujjah, where the concepts of Nubuwwat and Risalat is discussed, followed by the issue of Imamat and Khilafat. If just as a comparison here, if you look at Sayyid Bukhari, when he compiled the ahadith, this is also the first compilation in the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, you will see the book begins with Kitab al-Bad' al-Wahi, the book or the section dealing with the beginning of revelation, the story of how the revelation began. And then the second chapter is Kitab al-Iman, talking about Iman and belief. And the third chapter is Kitab al-Ilm. And this is where you come to realize that, the emphasis which is there when it comes to the matters of Aqidah and the Shi'i tradition can also be seen in the way, Shaykh Kulaini has basically, put the ahadith subject-wise, beginning with Kitab al-Aql wal-Jahl, and then going on to Kitab Fadl al-Ilm. Now, in Urdu or Gujarati or Farsi, even in Arabic, when you talk about Jahl, what is the opposite of Jahl? It's ilm. How come it doesn't say Kitabul Ilmi wal Jahl? It says Kitabul Aql wal Jahl. Because you can have somebody who is alim, which means he has information, quite a lot. But he really doesn't have that wisdom and aql to analyze the information that he has. And therefore here, jahl is not absence of information. Jahl is not absence of ilm. Jahl is actually inability to analyze the information that you have. And that's where you see the Kitab al-Aql wal-Jahl. Aql and Jahl has been put as opposites. This is where sometimes we see, for example, there was a firqa among Muslims known as Mu'tazila. They didn't last that long during the Abbasid time, they perished. One of the beliefs that they had about the Khulafa was the same sequence. They have Abu Bakr and Umar and then Uthman and then Ali. But the distinction between Mu'tazila compared to Asha'ira was that they would say, and they were more a rational school as far as theology is concerned, that when it comes to the status of Ali bin Abi Talib, they believe that he was afdal. After Rasulullah, among the Sahaba, if there was somebody who was afdal, it was Ali bin Abi Talib. So our theologians, for example, when they used to have this discussion in the early days with them, they would say, how come you believe that Ali is afdal, yet you prefer somebody else over him? And they said, well, for us, تفضيل المفضول على الأفضل ليس بقبيح. Preferring somebody who is less over somebody who is higher is not a wrong thing to do. Whereas we have a problem with that analysis and wisdom. This is where, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَفَمَنْ يَهْدِي إِلَى الْحَقِّ أَحَقٌّ يُتَّبَعْ أَمَّنْ لَا يَهْدِي إِلَّا أَنْ يُهْدَى. Somebody who can guide you directly is worthy of being followed, or somebody who, before guiding you, needs to be guided himself. And this is where we see the issue of aql as an important criteria when it comes to the aqidah in the Shi'i understanding. One of the ahadith that Sheikh Kulaini actually has mentioned in that Kitab al-Aql wal-Jahl, talking about the importance of aql, is a hadith from Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salatu wa salam. And he is the father of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, and this is where, very close to the earlier generations, and they are the source of ahadith of the Prophet for us. And there is a narration with Muhammad bin Muslim, a very close companion of the fifth Imam, where the Imam says, talking about aql, لما خلق الله العقل استنطقه. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created an intellect, aql, He made it speak. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can create, ability of nutq and speech in whatever thing He wants. ثم قال له. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the aql, أقبل فأقبل. Come forward, and it came forward. ثم قال له أدبر فأدبر. Then He said, go back, and it went back. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says, according to the hadith, ثم قال وعزتي وجلالي ما خلقت خلقا هو أحب إلي منك. That I have not created, by my might and my majesty, I haven't created a creature more beloved to me than you. And then He says, وَلَا أَكْمَلْتُكَ إِلَّا فِي مَنْ أُحِبُّ. And I have not perfected you, aql, except in the one whom I love. And this is where the hadith ends, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says, verily, أَمَّا إِنِّي إِيَّاكَ أَأْمُرُ. I command you only. وَإِيَّاكَ أَنْهَى. And you alone do I forbid. You alone do I punish, and you alone do I confirm the reward. What does this mean? This is actually more a isti'ara. Symbolism is in there. Don't take it in a literal sense. Number one, aql is not a physical entity. No scientist can tell you, open up the body or the head of somebody and say, this is the aql. It's a non-physical entity. according to the commentators of Usul Kafi, especially Salih al-Mazindarani, says, when you talk about aql without the body, we use the term aql. But when aql is placed in the body of a human being, the preferred term is nafs. And this is where the other thing I would say is that our fifth Imam is talking about this conversation between Allah and aql in a symbolic sense, that aql is actually the recipient of the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, when he says, come forward, it comes forward. Go back, it moves back. And so it is the aql which is the recipient of the divine commands. If you look at Surah Al-Shams, وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا, nafs, which is now already in the body of a human being. فَعَلَهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did ilham. He inspired what is right and what is wrong to the nafs of the human being. So the nafs of human being is recipient of the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, and the body is just a vehicle being used by aql to express its obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All the commandments are directed to the aql, and this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِيَّاكَ آمُرُ وَإِيَّاكَ أَنْهَى. I command to you and forbid you. And then he says, I reward you and I punish you, because whatever is going to happen, based on the guidance that Allah has given to us through our aql. And aql is considered to be the best of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And nobody's aql is of the same level, not everyone. Those whom Allah loves, He gives more perfection to the aql which is given to them. But the basic aql is there, part of all human beings. One point that it is aql which is the recipient of Allah's commandments is, you will see in our Sharia we are told one of the conditions for a person to be mukallaf. Mukallaf means somebody who is responsible for his or her actions in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is aqil. He must have aql. If he is not aqil, he is majnoon. If he is majnoon, he is not under that cover of the obligations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let me just connect that with the issue of defying the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How does it happen? It happens when our emotions and our desires overcome our aql. Aql is that spiritual element. فَعَلَهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَدْ أَفْلَهَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. Whoever keeps that nafs pure, away from sins, he is successful. وَخَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. But if you let the soul being corrupted or surrounded with sins, it will no more be able to show light to us. And this is where we have to realize that whenever defiance takes place, it is because our hawa and havas, our desires and emotion have overcome our aql. And this is where, another hadith from that selection from Usul Kafi. Very quick, we are running out of time here. This is from Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, where one of his companions asked him, Ma al-aql? What is aql? And the Imam says, Ma ubida bih ar-Rahman wa iktusiba bih al-jinan. What is aql? Aql is through it, the beneficent God is worshipped, and through it the paradise is achieved. Aql is the path of worshipping Allah, obeying Allah, and achieving the Jannah in the Akhirah. So this companion then had a following question. We know the history, the struggle among the Muslims in the early days, especially in Siffin. You have Amir al-Mu'minin on one side, Muawiyah on the other side. So he asked the Imam, وَمَا الَّذِي كَانَ فِي مُعَاوِيَةٍ? What was there in the head of Muawiyah? Was there aql? And he says, تلك النكرة تلك الشيطنة. No, it was craftiness, it was satanic temptations. هي شبيحة بالعقل وليست بالعقل. It resembled aql, but it was not the true aql. Inshallah, we'll go through some examples, inshallah, tomorrow. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq, to, through this fasting of the month of Ramadan, to control our emotions and desires, so that we can listen to the voice of our pure aql, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspires what is right and what is wrong for us. And may He always keep us on the path of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad salawatullah alayhi ajma'een.